on the tracks. The other side on the tracks.
Here in Germany, record executives are excited at the success of several German artists in the American charts. Peter Schilling has gone into the top 20 with his Major Tom, a former German #1. Nina has made the top 100 with 99 Luftballons. And Falco has sold over 200,000 copies of his German-language original of Der Kommissar. But at home in Deutschland, there's a problem. A reduced share of chart records by German artists, and that means less profit for the local record companies. Blame it in part on those pesky British groups who insist on selling records abroad. For example, Depeche Mode from Basildon have done over 200,000 copies of Construction Time Again. And here in beautiful, sunny downtown Hamburg, they've sold out 3 nights at the Hamburg Music Hall. There was a lot of publicity, actually, when Dreaming of Me first entered the charts in a moderate position, that this is a young group on an independent label. Well, of course, you couldn't help being young or independent. But did you feel any pressure just because you were a young group?
Not really, no. I think it's more to your advantage, you know, being that young. I think it's since the sort of the punk explosion that's become easier to do for young people to start bands. You know, you felt that you don't have to learn how to play an instrument for 10 years before you can get into the music business. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, you signed with Daniel Miller on Mute Records. We're told that at the time nobody else was making any offers, but after you had a chart record, obviously you must have had some kind of offers. What made you decide to stick with him?
Well, it was actually during when we was playing concerts, for instance, at the Bridge House, and various major labels were offering us sort of money and things, and all different advances for clothes and things like that. But it was not really interesting. So we were working and we were doing it mainly for fun at that time. We just wanted to make a record sort of thing. And Daniel came along and offered us that.
So what made you decide that Depeche were right for you?
Well, I saw them. They were supporting Fat Gadget at a concert in a place called the Bridge House. And they were just great, that's all. You know, really good songs, just the right approach to what the music. I mean, I could just tell within a few minutes that it was the right thing.
And of course, in a sense, they were slightly ahead, perhaps a year ahead, in their development with synthesizers. Was that something that you saw coming around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, I'd visualized, well, I'd imagined that there would be a group, or lots of groups, really, like of that age coming up with sort of growing up more with a synthesizer rather than going to it because it was fashionable. And they were just one of a lot of groups around at that time, or a few groups around at that time, but they just had something special. The songs and just the approach, the arrangements and things like that, which is great.
Would you say that you actually got good guidance from Daniel Miller, or did he just kind of leave you alone?
No, I think we were very, very lucky to find Daniel, or for Daniel to find us, because at that time we were very naive in the know, if you like, you know, about the music business, and we didn't really understand any of it. And when people sort of are offering you huge amounts of money, you don't really understand why. And Daniel sort of come along and he didn't have any money, but he said he could make a record and he could do as well with it as any major label, and we thought it was the most honest thing we had heard, and so we decided to do it with him.
Well, every record was a success. New Life made the top 20 and had a very interesting sleeve on the single. And all of your records in that time, 1981, had very interesting sleeves on them. Who was doing them for you?
All sorts of people.
Mainly friends, the early sleeves. You know, we used to just tell all our friends that we had a record coming out and ask them to come up with all designs and that, and so that's how they came to be.
There was like friends of Vince and Martin and General, and I had friends at college who were doing things, and we just sort of got all our bits together at the end and we'd decide which one we liked the best and use it. It was good. It's interesting doing that sort of thing.
And of course you had was it a chicken on the front of the spell?
A swan. It could have been a chicken. It was in a plastic bag.
It was supposed to be a flying swan, but I don't think they could find a flying swan, so we just ended up with a stuffed swan, you know, in a plastic
Don't
bag.
ask us why. Don't ask us why.
Well, you had Just Can't Get Enough in the top 10. That was your first big top 10 record.
Yeah.
And it really established you as a synthesizer group, of course. This is no surprise, since that's what you were all playing. But was it a tag that you thought was something you'd have to live down or get away from at all?
No, we've never liked to have a tag. You know, we'd never like to be, you know, given like we've been called new romantics, futurists, and everything. We've always tried to get away from any sort of tag, but we can't, you know, we can't deny that we use synthesizers. You know.
At least that's an honest tag.
Of course, Vince left the group, and in one of those moments of show business pressure, the old focus goes on Martin here to try and write the songs instead of Vince. I mean, you'd done a couple before, but did you feel a lot of pressure? Did you think you were up to the job?
We expected that Vince was going to leave about 6 months before he actually did. So we'd already sort of got down to some writing, and so when he finally told us, it didn't come as a shock. You know, we just went into a studio and come up with the next single.
Just when Depeche became a top 10 group, of course, Vince Clarke left them. Now, they say that they weren't panicked. Were you?
No, not really. It was such a gradual kind of departure, well, from the way I could see it, from the way the band could see it, I think, as well. That everybody was sort of gearing themselves up to it, and everybody knew that Martin could write good songs and had written good songs. And there was no point in panicking, really.
And of course, at the time, he wasn't the mythic Vince Clarke. He was just one of you guys who was leading the group.
It was also very early in our, you know, it was very early on, so it was good in a way that it happened at that time, because nothing had really, it'd only been one album. And since then, of course, we've had the two albums that have been very successful for us. And so I think we've established ourselves since then. And people don't really, a lot of people don't even associate Vince with Depeche Mode anymore. You know, especially in places like Germany, you know, they ask if you know Vince, you know, have you ever met him? And you say, yeah, for a while.
I think it was quite brave of Vince actually to leave at that time, really.
Yeah.
Because he could have just hung in there and, like, when he just didn't want to, and we could have, like, consequently we could have some quite bad material there, like, if he didn't have his heart in the group. So it was probably a brave thing to do.
Well, of course, he went on to great heights, his finest achievement being the signature tune of this series. Since you had written part or whole of the Depeche Mode catalog when you left them, were you afraid for their fate, or were you confident they'd be all right?
I was quite confident. I mean, I knew, because Martin wrote a couple of tracks on the album, and I mean, I think he's a great songwriter. And I think it was kind of good for both of us, really, because it gave us both a chance to kind of break out and do different things.
Well, Martin's song, See You, makes the top 10, so you're still up there, at which point Alan begins to come into the picture. Had you been watching these guys from afar, or did they come to you?
They advertised in a Melody Maker when Vince left, and I answered the advert. That was all, really.
Did they
I knew of the singles, New Life and Just Can't Get Enough, but that's all I knew about the group.
Liar.
Liar. It's true.
Why do you say he's a liar?
No, he's probably, he did actually when he came along, because everyone else, it was funny because the auditioning that we was doing, a lot of the people that were coming along, they were fans, you know, and they were sort of so eager to come in, and a lot of them couldn't play that well or anything, and then Al come along. And he said, well, no, I've never really heard any of your stuff, you know. And so I suppose that sort of gave us the first idea that maybe that Alan was the right person.
1982 was the year, and the singles started doing less well in that year. You had, for example, Leave in Silence,
Yeah.
probably doing almost the least well. Did you at all worry about that?
At the time, I mean, obviously, you sort of, in the back of your mind, you're a bit worried about it, but we knew, see, we gambled with Leaving Silence because we knew that it wasn't, on the album, it wasn't the most commercial thing on there, or it wasn't the most commercial thing that we'd ever done before. So we wasn't expecting it to do miracles, but I think it was good for us because it was like a turning point for us. And we were just moving on a bit and with a broken frame. And I think that was very good for us, really.
Well, we must mention here the beautiful cover of Broken Frame. I love that cover. It looked like some woman, well, you had The Meaning of Love as a single, and also then, I guess, you started to change quite noticeably, I thought, with Get the Balance Right, because then you started getting heavy lyrical content, and suddenly it was away from the nice little love songs that
Yeah.
you started off with. Now, was this just a sign of your becoming a man, Martin, or was it something the group asked you to do?
I think it was just something that happened. You know, we all the time we try to move on, and do something different. And I think we just got a bit bored with, producing the real pop songs, and so it just sort of happened.
Well, get the balance right. It seemed to be a very personal tale of life in the music business. Was it?
Was it?
Can't remember any, Mark.
No, I don't think so. It was about life in general, as most of them are.
Well, do you carry on everywhere as you did on your British tour? That is, you tend to dance to the very limits of the stage, as if you'd been shot out of a gun.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, see, it's difficult for the other guys to move about a lot because they're behind their keyboards. And so I try and use, if the stage is very big, I try and use as much space as possible and reach as many people as possible in that small amount of time. And I think it works, in that way. I don't think we lack any sort of visual in that way. The audience are always very excited, and I can keep them excited.
Also, as we start playing bigger places, you've got to have more movement. Because there's so many. I mean, say for instance, this tour, the German, we've been playing to sort of like 6,000 people, a gig, and you just have to make big movements.
With Construction Time again, the third album, which did better than any of the others in the chart, a lot of people commented that you were getting, again, more serious, deeper, and that phrase industrial music came out. Did you feel you were part of any movement which had perhaps Germanic connections?
Not really, no. I think it's definitely, the Construction Time again is definitely a harder feel in musical. The actual sound of the album is a lot harder than the previous two albums. I don't think it was a move to sort of...
It wasn't really part of a movement, it was more to do with it. We had the title, Construction Time again, first, before anything else, really. Well, we had the songs.
Which is very rare.
And that gave us kind of ideas to how to do the music to go with that title and the songs and everything. Hence the industrial feel of it.
Where was that video with the never-ending flyover filmed?
Berlin. It's while we was mixing the album, and a crew came over from England and filmed it there.
Do you enjoy Berlin?
It's one of my favourite cities.
Do you find the musical scene there at all interesting?
I think, oh yeah, of course. When we was actually in the studio, loads of people came up to hear what we was doing just to see Daniel, because Daniel knows a lot of people there, and it's very good. Yeah, very good scene.
Some of your recent music has been mentioned in the same breath as DEF. Does that mean anything to you, that group?
Well, it's one of Martin's favourite groups, or before they split, anyhow.
Uh-huh. How would you describe them to the British audience who may not know them?
Oh, you're good
Well,
at this.
DAF.
Yeah, it's DAF.
Well, it's a fairly heavy electronic, very basic kind of... Their music consists mainly of a bass sequence, a riff and drums, and this kind of heavy political German... I don't know if you call it singing, really. It's more like shouting over the top. But they come up with some very interesting things.
What was that instrument that you were playing in that Everything Counts video, Andy? It was a large thing.
Which is now broken.
Yeah, it's now broken. It's a shawm. I think it's some sort of a medieval oboe type thing.
Aren't you going to get another one, or where do you find them?
Actually, I suppose they're very hard to come. I think we bought it from an antique type music shop. They're quite expensive instruments, but at the moment, it's broken. I've got to get it mended, really.
Did you just invent the part, or did you learn the instrument?
It isn't actually the sound on the record, I must say, because it is actually a synth.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's just like a couple of sounds, isn't it, put together?
But we just tried to make whatever sounds we'd used to look a little bit interesting in a video and that by using...
Because normally, if you just have a keyboard and you go, it looks pretty boring. And
Well,
it actually does sound virtually the same, you know, as that sound. So I mean.
Martin, was it in that song or Love in Itself that you got to strum the guitar for about 6 seconds?
That was Love in Itself.
I thought, actually, it looked hysterical on TV. Why did you put it in?
Well, we, as usual, the song had been written and it didn't have a middle eight. Like Daniel always says, you know, shove a middle eight in. And you can't fail with a middle eight. So we made up this instrumental bit in the middle, which, you know, we thought was quite funny. And the guitar sounded quite good with it, so.
Which way would you like to go in the future, or do you know?
It's difficult to say, really. We just try and use sounds that suit the song, rather than, you know, just synthesizers or now we're just going to use acoustic instruments. We'll use whatever suits, really, and that could be anything.
Because so many British groups are doing well in charts all over the world. You've certainly done well in the German charts, for example. Do you consider yourself part of any movement? Do you think any of the groups consider themselves part of any movement?
I'd like, personally, I mean, I think we all would like not to think, you know, that everyone was grouped together, you know, and bands can just do things with their own name, you know, and just carry on like that. But I think, as I said before, people like to group people together, you know, that's a natural thing. But I think we're establishing ourselves in a lot of countries, especially in Europe, in places like Sweden and Germany, as Depeche Mode.
I think a lot of countries, they sort of like try to, like, for instance, when we went to Canada, you know, we had people, there was a lot of British groups going there at that time, and they sort of had the British Invasion T-shirts, you know, with loads of groups grouped together, totally different. And I think a lot of people abroad tend to class British groups together.
Yeah.
That's British music.
As Depeche continue to spread internationally, and as Vince Clarke has his successes, do you think this company may get too big for you to want to keep it as small as it has been?
It's always a real danger. I mean, we've signed, not exactly signed because we don't really sign groups, but we've started working with 2 new groups, just only 2 new groups in the last 2 years. So we're trying to, you know, I'm trying to keep it very, very small and efficient, as efficient as possible, you know.